and I have no idea, but I have some idea. We talked about having a moment of silence, which would be appropriate, I think. It also occurred to me, I couldn't help but remember years ago, I guess it's been at least a decade, at one of the Winston-Salem Foundation luncheons, there was a speaker, a young man who'd come up from Atlanta, and he had scattered around on all the tables a measuring tape. And I didn't know what those were for, but when he began to speak, he talked about, as a child, how close he'd been to his grandfather. And that one day he said to his grandfather, "Grandpa, I want to change the world." And his grandpa said, "That's a great idea. But why don't you start by changing the 3 feet right around you?" And I thought about that and took a little bit of comfort, and that's where we are. Regardless of where you were or what you thought or how you voted or anything else, what we really can try to do is to change a little bit of earth and space around us. And that's what this series is really about, Faith in the City, is thinking about our children, our students in this community, and how much we care and how much we hope that the inequities that exist and that persist will eventually go away, and that every child will begin to have the fullest education possible so that they can realize their full potential that has been given to them by the Creator. So that's where I am after a week of, and right in the middle of it, I will have to tell you, I also had COVID for the first time. So I got to isolate in my apartment and couldn't even talk to anybody except by phone as we went through the process of these last few weeks. Anyway, I think I'm over it enough not to worry about giving anybody anything today. So we are delighted today to have 3 wonderful people to share their experience and their expertise with us and to bring us up to date about sort of how we're doing in beginning to try to close some of the gaps, especially in the area of reading. I don't want to say a whole lot about them because I think they're familiar people to a lot of you, but I looked back over their bios and I realized there were just some interesting things that stood out to me. One of Trisha's titles in Florida was, let's see, Director of Leadership Development. No, that's not it. Superintendent of Leadership, Professional Development, and School Transformation. Now that's quite a title. And so we are counting on her to continue that work and to continue the leadership in transforming our own schools right here in our county. And we are grateful for all your years of experience and grateful that Florida let us have you for a while. Esharan is going to be here also to talk to us. She is the Executive Director of Love Literacy. She has served multiple roles at that organization, but as an Executive Director since 2020. Esharan holds a master's degree in community counseling, and she also has 5 children, ages 18, 16, 13, 11, and 3. Now that might have changed since that.
By 1 year.
Okay. And then we also have Adam Hill. Adam got a Master's of Science in Neuroscience from Yale University. I wouldn't even know how to talk to you about that. And a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from Binghamton University. Now, he has been working at Forsyth Futures for a long time. And it's just fascinating that we have such an organization here. This has been an attempt to give us a central place for managing data across organizations so that as a community, we can begin to recognize outcomes that are coming out of multiple efforts from many different sources. So Adam's going to talk to us about how you go about transforming some of that data into action that can yield positive outcomes. Just a couple of logistics. If you need at any point, the restrooms, they're right out there. There are cookies and liquid refreshment out there. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. That implies something that you won't get out there. But anyway, something to drink. And so again, we are glad you're here. Welcome. And thank you for, and welcome with me, our distinguished guest this morning. Because we also have a Zoom audience, we have to ask them to speak right here at the microphone. But thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for that really fantastic introduction, Dean. So I think she described Forsyth Futures really well. We're a local nonprofit that does data and research work. And a lot of work we do is in the education space. So today I'm going to just share some high-level data on kind of where we are as a community in our reading outcomes, and then Esharan and superintendent get to talk about some of the great work that we're doing to really try to turn the corner on improving these outcomes that we're seeing. So first, I have two kind of outcome measures of data that I'm going to share today. First is kindergarten readiness. The way this assessment that I'm showing here is an early literacy assessment that's administered at the beginning of the year in kindergarten. It's called the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, or DIBELS. So here, there's really kind of three major points, showing data from 2019 to last school year, 2024. You can see across all groups, here we have all students, which is the yellow line, and then we have data by Black, Hispanic, Latino, and white students. What you can see kind of across the board is the outcomes did go down in the pandemic and are starting to come back up, but I did a little dotted line to show what the outcomes were pre-pandemic. And so you can see we have not gotten back to where we were before the pandemic in the 2018-19 school year. So that's kind of one major trend I think this is showing. Another major point here is that in the last school year, this is measuring benchmark or above. So benchmark is really indicating are children on track to be proficient in reading by the end of third grade. So what this is showing that in the last school year, less than half, I think it's 35%. So a third of the children in the school system beginning of year in kindergarten, so right when they come in, were benchmark or above on this assessment. So 2/3 of the children were not at benchmark. And then I think the third main point is we are seeing these gaps across these different racial ethnic groups, even when they come into kindergarten. So these gaps are there at the beginning of their time in the school system. So lots of work to do in the 0 to 4 early childhood space. Then here is the third grade reading end of grade assessment that's done with all third graders. So I think a similar trend here on the impact of the pandemic. We see a drop and we are coming back up. So that's great to see that we're improving those since the beginning of the pandemic. But those are still, like the yellow line again is all students. It's right in the middle there. And we're not quite at pre-pandemic levels. And I think it's right around 47% in the 23-24 school year. So again, we're seeing improvement. So coming back to where we were, but still in last school year, less than half of the children in the end of third grade are proficient in reading. And big gaps as well across these racial ethnic groups between Black, Hispanic, Latino, and white. With underperformance with Black and Hispanic Latino children compared to white. So those are our outcomes. Like I said, lots of work to do. So I think the superintendent and Esharan get to talk about kind of what we're working on as a community to really improve these outcomes. I did want to, before handing it over to them, I wanted to talk about what the data ecosystem or landscape looks like. Beyond some of this data I'm sharing, there is generally kind of limited data that is available that gives us kind of this holistic picture, particularly in the early childhood space. Our data in the early childhood space is very much fragmented and siloed across different organizations, institutions, and we really don't have complete data about all children. 0 to 4. So here I'm highlighting kind of what data we do have available, what we have limited access to, and really where there isn't much data at all. And I think I'm going to talk a bit about how we're trying to work on improving what data we have available to help inform our strategies and work we do as a community. So we do have pretty good data on, what percentage of children are attending licensed childcare facilities. We have more limited access to, programmatic data across different early childhood programs. Again, like I said, that's pretty siloed. It's housed at all the different organizations, and so it's really hard to get a complete picture of, pulling all that data together. We don't have very great information about how many children are in non-licensed childcare facilities, as well as half-day childcare. We have some data on pre-K developmental child outcomes in publicly funded slots, but that's about a third of the 4-year-olds. So, and then we really don't have good child development data for pretty much all other children. When we do have it, it's mostly on paper. There's an assessment called the Ages and Stages questionnaire that a fair number of programs use. The pediatrician's offices use an assessment called SWIC, but most of that exists on paper. So there's a lot of work to do in terms of making that data more accessible. So what data don't we have that I think lots of us are interested in is, like I said, child development data for the majority of children. We have it in some places like the public pre-K classrooms. We don't have great data on how many books are in children and families' homes. We don't have great information about kind of building that love of reading and parent engagement in child education. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of what information we have as well to help inform how we improve outcomes. So what are we doing around getting better data? So Smart Start has funded a small project that we've helped facilitate over the last couple of years of really getting a good sense of what data do we have. So we have really kind of completed an audit of information about, what's the data that different service providers have, and how can we start identifying ways to improve better compiling that information, sharing data across organizations, and making that accessible to everyone so that we can kind of have a better picture of what outcomes look like. So we've done a lot of exploration work, and then that's helping inform and feed into some work that Esharan's going to talk about with the campaign for grade level reading. I think an opportunity with that is to really build out a data agenda of how do we improve what data we have for early childhood space. So I think that's going to be an opportunity to continue doing work and making progress related to having better data. And then also part of the campaign for grade level reading, we completed a resource or program asset map to really identify what services we're providing as a community, and where are there opportunities for collaboration and gaps in services and resources. And that's all she's gonna talk more about kind of where all that is headed and how that's gonna inform, action plans for the community. So that is what I have. And they're gonna talk about kind of how we're taking action related to these outcomes. So I think Superintendent McManus is next.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Adam and Esharan. And the thing I am most excited about is that with Campaign for Grade Level Reading and with the data sharing project is that this is definitely a community effort to have all of our children reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And as we all know, it starts it starts before birth, but then as a new grandmother of a 3-month-old, it's happening now. The language development, I was just visiting my daughter this weekend, and Field is already loving books. Boy, he is just shaking his legs when he's being read to, and she reads multiple books a day. And when I tell you that, it's so exciting to see. People told me being a grandmother was going to be the best thing, and I really did not realize it. But I think it is seeing your child being a great mom. And I always tell Morgan, you're way better than I was when I look at you now. But there's that language development, and that early childhood development is so important. And so when I think about reading what I'm going to share with you about literacy, when I look at that data, I'm like, gosh, I wish we could have the kids, 15 hours a day. We've got them about 6. And it's not all just literacy, although you can integrate literacy throughout the day as much as possible. But gosh, it needs to be, especially if kids are coming in already behind the 8 ball with language development, vocabulary. We need a lot of time and a lot of interaction and exposure to make up for that gap. So if you start with a gap, we definitely don't want that gap to widen. We need to close it, but it has to be like beyond just the 6 hours of the school day. So I'm so excited that our community, we've got a great plan, and it's just going to keep getting better. So really quickly, I don't need to go back into why we're doing this, but being able to read on grade level by 3rd grade is a predictor to so many other successes in life. We all know that. That's why we're here. That's why we came up with this 90 by 25 a few years back. Obviously, post-pandemic, we are further behind, but we're starting to make that climb back up. But this, and I don't expect you to read this, but one of the things we have is a strong framework that for literacy. It is not, we're not just approaching each day without a plan. There is a strong framework for what we're doing that includes the use of data, professional development, ongoing coaching, and obviously grounded in equity. But I say, here are the main things right now. If you were to say, okay, what is the school district's part in this? I will tell you that making sure that kids have access to quality reading instruction every day is number 1 on part. Making sure that our teachers are equipped with the knowledge to teach reading is our part, 110%. Making sure kids have access to books, both in the classroom and in the media center, that are representative of them, and that just open the doors to so much in the world, and that's what books do. That is our part. We have to do that. And so that we believe that that's critical. So like instilling a love of reading, that is a role of the school district in my belief. And we have access, we have the books and the resources to be able to do that. And so again, here's how we're doing that. Our district was, when the state launched letters training, our district was in the first cohort, and we continue to make sure that all teachers have that training in letters. And that is based on the science of reading. So it is grounded in phonics and phonemic awareness. It's involves comprehension, vocabulary, and all of that, but strong foundation in phonics and phonemic awareness. I know that that's been a big push in our state, but we continue to have our own way to sustain that. Sometimes when funding is provided to districts on the front end, you then can't sustain that work, but we've been able to sustain it from when teachers are newly hired. They join the training that we are now offering on site. We don't have to send people away. We've got the trainers on site. All of our kids in K through 3rd grade have a reading plan that is designed specifically for them. So if a child, and I will say that when you hear me share some examples of things happening in schools, a strong core instruction for all is most critical, so that all students should be exposed to on grade level reading instruction every day. And that is our focus. But then those that are not on grade level need an additional layer of support. And those of you that have been teachers, you probably know that as MTSS, that multi-tiered system of support. And that's where students get something beyond the strong core. And there are tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. If you're in tier 3 intervention, that means the tier 2 interventions that you're getting beyond are still not enough to bridge that gap or to catch you up. All of this work is rooted in the fact that 95% of students should be able to read on grade level. And the only ones that may not be able to do that have significant cognitive delays. So students with disabilities can learn to read on grade level. That happens every day. but they have to be exposed to on grade level instruction. The third grade reading test that this data is based on, it's a third grade reading test, and it is not just a read the passage and answer the questions like we might have been used to back in the day when we took tests in school. It is read this text and read this text and compare and contrast and do things that are multiple, and in some cases read 3 texts and do deeper level, high level questioning, and that's at the age of 3rd grade. That's the age of 3rd grade where we're doing really complex analyzing of text. And much of the text, by the way, is not always culturally relevant for our children. And so the vocabulary development and being able to have vocabulary development in social studies and in science and in math and in all those things helps our students too. So when I talk about literacy instruction, I'm talking about during the reading block right now, but it's all day. It's all day because that's where vocabulary development is so important. It's in the nonfiction. It's in nonfiction text as well. So basically individual reading plans, quality small group instruction, that's where the individual needs of kids related to their skills that they need to develop further. That's where that happens. The classroom libraries, 2 years ago, we used ESSER dollars to give every teacher a classroom library. And those, we worked very closely with a vendor to make sure that the texts were culturally responsive to our students, that they could see themselves in the books that are in their classrooms. That was very important. I cannot say enough about number 5, strong evidence-based curriculum resources. Someone might think, why is that so important? Well, if you have every teacher in the district using whatever they want to teach reading instruction, you cannot that's not a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And so we basically, this is our 4th year of using Wonders as the reading curriculum, the core curriculum. That's the one that has the on grade level regardless, everybody exposed to on grade level. But then we also have Hegarty for our phonics and phonemic awareness. You can see that when you walk into classrooms throughout the district, you see the use of common materials, common resources. That is really important. You also can see evidence of the teachers having been trained in letters. It's obvious when you walk into classrooms. And then we have the last 2 things are support. We have created a classroom walkthrough tool that looks for literacy. Like all of the look fors we have, do we see them in schools? So then you can provide just-in-time professional development where there might be schools or certain grade levels or new teachers that might be struggling or having challenges. We can look at this data to say, where do we need to provide more supports? And that's where this last part comes in as well. With district-based coaches and teacher leaders, we've got literacy coaches that are district-based that are coaching the coaches. We don't have enough of them to impact individual teachers, but they're coaching the coaches or coaching your teacher leaders like MCL goals. At the end of the day, it's about building capacity of the adults in school for the schools for the 6 hours a day that we are providing instruction and probably the 120 minutes that is focused specifically on literacy. So that's what we have. So I want you to paint that picture. You've got kids for a certain amount of time in the day, which is why what happens after school, what happens on Saturdays, what happens everywhere in doctors' offices, what happens in dentists' offices, what happens in community events throughout this. All of that is critical for making sure that our kids have what they need to be successful in literacy. The part that we are focused on, we are laser-like focused on, this we can control completely in the 6 hours a day that we have students. And so we keep working at it. We keep working at it. Every child needs to have a high-quality teacher in front of them, which is part of this effort as well. You cannot do this if you do not have great teachers in front of kids. And so being able to recruit and retain great teachers so that all kids have access to high quality instruction every day is part of this puzzle. Here's some pictures of some of our classroom libraries. And then this shows a little bit about our the tier 2 and 3 and what happens with that. You've got your core block and then you've got extra resources. But here is a few weeks ago, I don't know if you can see those pictures, but I took a small group of folks from the community into observed reading instruction at Kernersville Elementary. And I'm going to end on this because I think that, you know, when you look at, if you were to have gone on this walk with us, and we spent about 2 hours there, first listening to the principal talk about how they are approaching literacy using the materials we have, but then the intervention times and how students are regrouped. It is the most amazing body of work that is happening there. And this is happening in many of our schools where they're using every person available, all of your teaching assistants, all of your teachers to actually regroup kids. So they get what they get in the during core instruction, they get their on-grade level instruction, and then they're grouped based on what needs they have. And those groups can change. But every single day, they're broken into very small groups and getting extra supports based on what they need. It is incredible from what materials they're using to what that instruction looks like. And these are just examples as I walked through of kids getting the extra supports they need. Many of their children at KMS are second language learners, so English is their second language. But I will tell you, I think you don't take the test, if you don't speak English and you come to our school district, that first year, I don't think you take the state test, the second year you do. And so we've got a lot of work to do. The children are fluent in their own language. So it's a matter of them, they don't need to take the test in their own language. So it's a matter of us really making sure they get what they need to be successful on this state assessment. That's the assessment we're talking about. That's the assessment we're graded on. But incredible work happening, and this is not the only place. If any of you are interested, I think the best way to show people what's happening with reading is to go into a school and see it happen. See what instruction looks like, see what children are doing, see how they're being stretched, see what is happening. The community members that were with me, their question was, okay, so what else can be done? And so what I say is it's beyond just 6 hours a day. We've got to make sure that we equip families and parents with resources that kids are being read to, that again, that 6 hours has got to be great. And we can't be in some of our schools not having great teachers and in some having great teachers. And so that is on us to recruit great teachers to some of our highest need schools where that gap continues, that's that gap you see, that racial achievement gap. As you know, we have many of our schools are racially identifiable, but not only racially identifiable, economically identifiable. And so how are we making sure to make the best teachers are in those classrooms with kids and that we provide the extra resources of literacy coaches, of math coaches, of all the extra help that our schools need. But anyway, so that is last thing. Sorry, I thought that was my last thing. This is my last thing. All of that also connects to something very important to us, and that is our Portrait of a Graduate and our Future Ready initiatives and Future Ready plan. So in our classrooms, these are skills that we're developing that are not literacy skills, but you are educating the whole child even during literacy. And so when you think about that, teaching these skills, teaching adaptability, personal responsibility, collaboration, communication, all of that should also be happening at the same time. So we're focused on that. And last, and also this shows academics, behavior, and culture go hand in hand. You're not teaching literacy in a bubble. You're teaching it as you're also teaching positive behavior and social emotional learning. And so it's all of that happening at once. And these are our 3 initiatives that we are if these are done well, if this work around the code, around prevention, promotion and prevention strategies for behavior, inclusion, and deeper learning in classrooms every day, which is authentic, engaging, hands-on learning, and all that's happening at the same time that those specific reading strategies that I talked to you about on the previous slide are happening, we're going to have great results. Plus one last thing, plus all the work that Esharan's going to come up and tell you about that's happening. Oh, and last but not least, leadership matters. Leadership matters. Our principal pipeline is incredibly important because we've got all these great plans, but if they're not implemented at the school level on a daily basis, and I always tell people, who has the power to do that? Who's in a school every day giving feedback and coaching and setting that culture of learning and learning and loving reading and all that? Who sets that tone? It's that building principle. And so that is so important. And so our principal pipeline initiative, everywhere I go now, when I talk about anything we're doing, I've got to go back to this because it's great leadership to live out these plans every day. And all of our plans are only as good as the implementation of them. And I one of my favorite quotes, it's really not my favorite quote, but it is a fact, is that 70% of change efforts fail because of implementation, a lack of implementation. And so the changes we're doing are really great, but only if they're implemented with fidelity daily. That's why the leaders are so important. So with that, now we'll bring up our wonderful Esharan.
All right, I'm Esharan. I'm the Executive Director of Love Literacy, and I'm so glad that this was the order because now it makes sense. I think a lot of you know us as Read, Write, Spell. We evolved, as we like to call it, into Love Literacy a year ago, last November. And our work as Read, Write, Spell was always to support the school district by providing tutors, professional development in the science of reading, parent engagement. But I think what we realized, and this is what Trisha really just highlighted, is all those things she listed, that's their focus, and they're gonna really pay attention to, stay on the cutting edge, do the best practices in those 6 hours that they have during the day. And so we continue to support them with tutors and things like that. But how do we engage the community to support the district and what happens outside of school? And that was a lot of our goal as Love Literacy, really to expand our work into that. And how do we convene the community to support in all the other ways? So as a part of that, Adam mentioned it, it is the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, which is a national program in Forsyth County. We've decided to call ourselves Forsyth County for Grade Level Reading. We feel like campaign seems impermanent, and we don't like that. So we're here to stay. But this is really a collective or a coalition of lots of organizations. And this is the vision statement that we came up with. But as we all want and believe in and speak to in all of our work, but a community where race and zip code do not determine the outcomes. I think Adam did a great job of showing us that right now that's not the community that we have. I think all children are struggling, but that racial gap is huge. And so we want all children to be reading on grade level. And I do just want to say that grade level proficient isn't the only bar, because after that is college and career ready. So we really want all of our kids to be college and career ready, but we know how important grade level proficiency is at 3rd grade. We want that for all children, but we want to focus our work where there's the most challenge right now. And so that is in that equity space. So who we are. This is a community-wide effort. There are about 30-ish, maybe a little bit more, maybe 35 organizations, people, businesses on our leadership team, really coming together to create strategies. And that is a unique thing. What we're joining, like I said, is a national kind of group, the Campaign for Grade Level Reading in North Carolina. It's headed by the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. In most other communities, we're the 14th to join, have about a 6 to 10 person organization leadership team. We have a 30 to 35, which I think is good because it means that this is important to a lot of people and a lot of people are willing to put some skin in the game for that. So we're really looking at addressing that opportunity gap, which is the race-based gap in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, ensuring that all students are on grade level because we know that's an indicator of success. And we are really trying to work in the spaces outside of what happens in terms of instruction. I think there are kind of 4 key ways that we've identified we'll get there. And I think you guys have spoken to these a little bit, but really eliminating silos. Adam talked about the data being siloed and that one of our strategies is to really look at that. And so we really want to eliminate silos. We want to also incorporate the voices of people closest to the challenge. And what we mean by that is when we look at the data and then we disaggregate it and we see where Black students are, where Latinx students are, where economically disadvantaged students are, that's who we want to be talking to help us inform our strategies. So we've done that. We've had community listening sessions to talk to community members, caregivers, parents, families, grandparents about what they think about literacy. What are the barriers? what does it look like? What type of community do they want to see as it relates to literacy? So we've done that in addition to what Adam talked about with asking organizations kind of what services do you provide? And it's the marriage of that will help us find the strategies. What do the community say? What does the organization say? And then where are the gaps? So we also want to really amplify already existing effective programming. Because if we know we have something that really works, then we want to advocate for more of that. And a lot of it is, funding. So if we have programs that are good, let's try to get more of those. But then also let's look at creating strategies that are innovative and that really, I would say, push the status quo, looking at how do we transform systems with this work as well. So we're in the process of creating a community strategic plan. And I do want to give a shout out to Marnie because she's a key person in that process. And she's also on our leadership team, but we're in the process of creating and writing this plan right now. We hope for it to be done by the end of the year. But what the national campaign says that we have to address 7 areas of focus. Stop playing catch up would be the kindergarten readiness, what Adam spoke to, in chronic absence. So the way that we're looking at that is how do we support, amplify the school system's kind of already existing plan around attendance. Because obviously if you're not there, you can't benefit from great core instruction. How do we look at what happens during the summer to ensure that kids are not losing gains that they have made? How do we address health-related challenges? And I want to just add that's mental health as well. How do we equip parents and caregivers to succeed? And then stop slow and reverse learning loss. All of this in an effort to advance grade level reading in 3rd grade. So those are the areas that we have to address in our plan. The plan is really looking at over the next 4 years, what are we as a community going to do? What are we already doing well that we're going to do more of? What are the gaps that we need to fund, to add programming to? And how do we really align it so that we're connecting the dots? We're not siloed. I know what Imprints is doing and, all the other kind of early childhood organizations and all these organizations that feed into literacy. And the last thing I'll say, this is our network of partners right now. There are more, but this is who we have logos for. There are community members, there are other organizations as well. But what I want to say, another big thing that we're trying to do is not create another group and another meeting for people to have to go to. So we're really trying to align this with work that's already happening in the community. So an example of that, Winston-Salem has My Brother's Keeper. And we started out with My Brother's Keeper. They have several milestones. And we started out on a milestone 6, which is about safety in the community. But My Brother's Keeper also has milestone 1 and 2. Milestone 1 is around kindergarten readiness, and milestone 2 is around 3rd grade reading. So instead of My Brother's Keeper addressing milestone 1 and 2, we can just make sure that we are aligning what we're doing with what My Brother's Keeper says you have to do. And so that's what we're spending a lot of time doing. And then there are other initiatives that have those same types of outcomes. Lots of initiatives are focused on 3rd grade reading and kindergarten readiness. And so we're trying to align it so we're not creating something extra, but ensuring that we're all working together to address the same things in the most efficient way possible. So I think that is my last slide. And I think we're going to take questions now, Sylvia.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause. We also have a generous amount of time for questions. So I'm going to start it off by entertaining questions from the audience, and then how we're going to do this so that people on our video screen can hear those joining us by Zoom. Once the first question comes, I'll repeat that, and I'll run the mic over, and you guys are ready for the rest of them. So if you have a question, direct it to one of our speakers, and then if you'll repeat the question, that will be helpful. Who has a question to start us off? Don't be shy. All right, Valerie.
When you do the testing, you test for learning abilities, part of that test.
So the question was, when children arrive at kindergarten, do you do the test for disabilities along with that?
Yeah, so that is not a, like, district-wide, like everyone takes a test like that. No, you start with instruction, and based on, you start with the assessment. If there is anything, or once instruction starts, that would be a red flag, that maybe there's something else going on here. Some children already come with an IEP from preschool, by the way, but if not, you basically start with interventions. So we don't just do a blanket. I know that might be a practice somewhere, but that is not our practice here. We do a blanket test for disabilities.
There's another question.
With regard to collecting data for early literacy and preschool programs, is there a place on the kindergarten registration where a parent can put if their child went to preschool or not, and so where they attended?
Question?
Is there a place in the kindergarten readiness entry
Parent,
process, whether they indicate if they've had early childhood experiences? I don't think so. Is that
Yes,
changing?
no, yes, because, well, I've asked for it too, and from what I've been told, that is on there. There is, I don't know if it says, it might just say, have you had a pre-K experience with a yes or no? What I'm trying to find out is for us to add where. Will you text Andy, Fabi? It's so nice to have Fabi in the room. Will you text Andy and see, because I feel like we have added it last year to actually say where, but it might just right now say, yes, you have, or no, you haven't. But we're gonna find out.
And the other thing I'd say is, I mean, I do think we are trying to better capture from the childcare providers, like who's attending, and then creating ways to link that data with school system data once they arrive in kindergarten. So I think we're trying to better pull together data from childcare providers so that we can get it that way as well.
I'm going to stand because I can't see you, if that's okay. I have a question about principals, given that Superintendent McManus talked about the absolute critical importance of principals. I have a program that was in schools many years before COVID, and COVID kneecapped us because our program had college. So why I want to say that is the program that we were teaching is social emotional growth, literacy, all the things you want for fifth graders to have when they move on to the next level. And one of the biggest difficulties we had was getting into schools, because the schools, the administrators, teachers, they don't overload anyway, as we know. But I wondered if the question is, how do you decide when to move principals around? Because that was our biggest problem. We would establish a relationship with principal. We have a great thing going, and then he or she was off to high school, and we teach them grade. So that's the kind of thing that the continuity of leadership in the schools is one thing I'm just curious about, and how programs like the one I love might be able to work with that, around that.
So I do believe there's two parts to that question, and one is, how do you get a program in a school? That's one, and the other is, you know, because it's so important to establish relationships with leaders, what is our philosophy about moving leaders around? We don't have, like, that is not my personal philosophy unless somebody is not performing. Like, if you are not moving the needle for kids and you've been there for a while, you need to move. That's how I look at that. But as far as just moving principals for different experiences and all that, we have not been doing that. Now, principals do apply for other challenges. And they might get those sometimes, but it's an extensive process that they go through with school teams now, like involved in the interview process. But again, just blanket movement of people is not, I don't think that's good, because if you look at some of your highest performing schools, they have consistency of teachers and leaders many times. And it's always your underperforming schools where you see a yo-yo happening. And I think that's part of the problem. And the state gives, if a school has been in low performing status for a certain period of time or not meeting growth, the state will give you these bonus options of $30,000 to move a leader there. And so when I came in, there were about 5 principals that were moved to other schools with good reason. These schools were underperforming, low performing. These principals were high performing, moved them to schools. Well, in 3 years, when those dollars run out, it's very difficult to sustain that. I mean, you're making $30,000 extra dollars a year to go do this work. And all of a sudden, that's done. There's no more funding coming from the state. What happens next? And it was a struggle for me to keep those folks. And personally, there's a part of me that's like, I'm not sure I even agree with all that at that level of money. But at the end of the day, the constant movement's not good. As far as getting a good program in schools, one thing we've been trying to do is do more at the systems level. So instead of individuals being, I want to get into these schools and push in and try to get in with the principal, which that's not really a good systemic type of practice. And that's where the issues come in. And so we're trying to say, is this something that we can use? And what schools should we use it with? And start at the district level and try to do that, because we've had a lot of complaints about that over time. And I don't think it's a battle that individuals should try to fight. And so we're trying to do things more at a systems level. Plus, we know what's on the plate of our schools. We know what programs already exist. We know where there might be gaps where things can fill in. And so we're trying to move away from individual school decisions like that.
Yeah, Esharan, can you talk to us more about centering community voice, both in broad terms and then specifically on those, how that's going?
Wow, thank you, Trisha. Okay. The question was, can we talk more about centering community voice in general terms and maybe give some specific examples? And so our process for the Forsyth County for grade level reading, we try to center community voice at multiple levels. So the leadership team, which is this group of people, but it also includes individuals that don't have a logo, and so they're not on there. But we really try to infuse people who either work in the community already. There's a woman on there who runs a small community daycare. We tried to do it that way, and we did not have a lot of success infusing, and I'm full transparency, infusing community members at the leadership team level, partly because the meeting requirements and all the other things. So the other way that we really tried to do it was through the listening sessions. And we tried to have a broad range of people that we talked to. So we went to Head Start, to 2 kind of parent meetings at Head Start so that we could talk to parents and caregivers. We went to some community, what are they called? Like community neighborhood associations. We went to Boston Thurman Neighborhood Association meeting. Imprints was very generous, and we created a survey, and they did those with parents during their parent visiting sessions in English and in Spanish. So that was a huge lift. I think we got close to 50 responses from families through that. So those are the specific ways that we tried to speak to and engage community. The questions that we asked were really, like I said, what is your vision? What does, and this was linked with another effort around thriving. So we had questions about what does it mean for the community to thrive? What does that look like? But we also asked, what does it look like to have strong literacy and reading opportunities in your community? What are the barriers? What we heard back from people in every meeting was that they don't know, a lack of kind of education around what's out there, a lack of transportation to get to what's out there, and really wanting to go back to having programming centered in the community. So not at, I'll just use our offices, not at love literacy offices, but if we want to do a parent engagement program, utilize the community centers that already exist in the community. So those were some of the things that we heard back. The most on fire group was the parents at Head Start on Winston-Salem State campus. And they were really, I think, really desired to be able to support their kids. They were doing, obviously their kid was already enrolled in Head Start. So that's another question we asked. What are strong programming that you can speak to in the community? So all of them said Head Start, but they wanted books in the home to bring to their kids, which for us as a Love Literacy, we're all about like instruction. We're trying to lean more into access to books and love of literacy, but they really wanted access to books from the beginning and other resources to help tell them like how to build language with their kids. So those were the things that we heard. Transportation was not a surprise. So we got to do better.
We know that our state is not doing what it needs to do for teacher salaries. So where do we stand in terms of the emphasis on trying to be sure we have sufficient high quality teachers?
Yeah. Well, and with our supplement, we're about 7th in the state with teacher salary, but our state is low in teacher salary. So just when you compare us to other states and when you compare our per pupil funding, it's low. But I will say as far as teachers, so we are doing a lot right now of growing our own. That is kind of our theme right now, is like, let's find teachers here. And when I look into our schools, you know, I always say our future teachers are sitting in our classrooms today. And so we've got several things going on right now. We've got, starting with our students, we've expanded teacher cadet program. So those students that might be interested in the teaching profession, it's if we don't start to change the salary talk though, and some other things, it's not the most appealing at times. And I'm telling you, telling a 17-year-old, but the retirement and health benefits are great. A very exciting thing for them. Now, when they get to be my age, I hope that if that happens, we're in big trouble. Because you've got your mid-year teachers that are phenomenal, that are like, if you know, that retirement is something that is deserved. I mean, for the time they've put in and on the low salary, the low salary. But anyway, so teacher cadets, we've got some great programs. I see people from the university. We've got Winston-Salem Teach, which is it's about 3 of our universities. I think it's Wake, Salem, and Winston-Salem State. And it's basically getting folks that may have gotten a degree in something else to get a master's in teaching, and they're providing all the coursework. And we're graduating people out of that cohort. It's a phenomenal, it's one of our partners in the room right now, phenomenal program. We are able to license our own teachers in our district. So we received approval from the state to license our own teachers. So if you are a person that is subbing and you have a degree in something that is not teaching, you also we can have you join our teacher residency program and get a license in teaching. We've got our Transition to Teach program that has been really supported by the Winston-Salem Foundation for years. And that is where we can get all of our TAs, teacher assistants, who many of them, they want to become teachers, some don't, and that's their prerogative. But if they do want to become teachers, it's called Transition to Teach program. So we can move them into full-time teaching programs. We have partnered with international teaching organizations. We have many of our teachers that are international, that are bilingual, that are helping in our dual immersion classrooms. And so we've done a lot with that. And so we just continue to look for ways and partners to grow our own teachers. I probably missed something. Somebody out there might even know of another thing, but I think our biggest thing is getting our students to be excited about this opportunity and then helping them plug into our universities to get their ed degrees. I know we are in talks with Winston-Salem State about how do we get more potential teachers into their education program, because their larger program is their health sciences and folks that want to go into nursing, but they've got a great teaching program. And so we're trying to think of how to partner better. We've got a focus called, oh gosh, I'm going to go blank all of a sudden, Drive for Forsyth, which is an effort that, if you all know, Dr. Graham headed that at the state level. He's on our committee now, but it's all around how do we recruit a diverse workforce and provide opportunities for people to come into teaching. Plus, you know, we're looking for ways to be innovative within our own profession. I talked about that the last time I was here, but like figuring out how to give teachers more time for planning. like what we expect of our teachers is astronomical. When you think of, you've got, you know, if an elementary teacher, you have, you know, potentially 25 little bodies in that classroom, and they are all coming in at different levels, coming in with different learning styles and different, and we've got to address that. We've got to address not only the literacy needs, but the social emotional learning needs, the behavioral health needs, the mental health needs. Like it's a huge job. As if any former teachers in the room, it has not gotten easier over time, but it's the best job. So we've got to do things differently to give our teachers more time to plan and the resources they need to be really effective. So those are things we're actually talking about today. How do we change this? The future. Yeah.
And just a few data points around childcare providers. In North Carolina, I think average salary, pay for childcare providers is $14 an hour. So, you know, we see as high as 30 to 40% turnover with childcare providers every year. So we do have a couple local efforts around bolstering pay for childcare providers. Smart Start has a wages program. And then we're using some ARPA dollars to increase pay for a subset of pre-K teachers, but there's just a lot of work to do there as well with early childhood teachers as well in terms of pay, and you know, has a huge impact on turnover.
We have time for one or two more questions.
Yeah, mine probably an easy one, but would you agree that something all of us can do in this room to help you would be to advocate to the Board of County Commissioners to increase the teacher supplement locally? And fund pre-K and maybe to bond in 2026 instead of 2028? I'll say yes.
Repeat the question first.
Should we advocate for local dollars to be infused into education to help better resource? I'd say yes. And one thing I would say is that the ARPA project I mentioned is ARPA dollars, and they're going to expire at the end of this school year. So that's been helping bolster some local resources into pre-K. So, I mean, I think we're going to be going to the commissioners shortly to talk about, you know, how can we continue putting resources into pre-K. So that's certainly one way I think we're going to be advocating for more local resources.
Yeah, well, I will say two things. So yes, and I do think there is an appetite for future to do something. I mean, we have to honestly, for them to give more money for teacher salaries, we probably have to do something with the taxes. So it would need to be on an election. It would need to be on a ballot. And so I know there's an appetite. I would think that would be coming in a future election. We also need to do, I don't know what it will take to change things at the state level. I really don't know. Because I feel like if we provided the right funding in the first place, like local government would not have that pressure to like try to fill that gap. And so I feel like we really, there's billions going somewhere at the state that could be coming here. So I just want to say that. And so yes, the answer is yes. We need funding. I will say too, though, we also need to do a better job of showing where the funding is going, like and this is a mirror moment, like reflecting, make sure people understand all that we are doing with the funding we're given. It's not going to wasted things, like how are we actually supporting literacy? And we should be able to dissect that and be very transparent with what we're doing. So that is something on us to show that, because there is a great need and we do need more funding. Reading Warriors is a great way to get involved. We have that still going. We've got NC Ed Core Tutors still going. We've got every school that has money for tutoring, and they're all looking for great individuals to come in and spend some time with kids and tutoring. And to answer your question earlier about application and how we find out, Fabi, will you answer it real quick?
He got the answer.
So for students who attend public preschool programs, we collect that data. We've not historically collected data around private preschool programs, but we're going to start doing that now.
So it will be on their registration moving forward, like on their beginning the kid to school.
Correct, they'll be able to check that.
Okay, all right.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah, I think we probably have a significant number of parents and family members that are here and have a problematic legal status in this country. And I'm just wondering, are there things in the community organizations or in the school system to try to create a safe environment for those individuals that have, you know, an opportunity where parents feel they can interact with the school system, do all those things that parents do, and not have a fear of any kind of legal.
So the answer is yes. I think our schools do whatever they can to make sure parents feel like it's a safe space to come in and to get resources and all that. But we also work closely with some of our community partners who are amazing, like the Latino Congress. And they have churches throughout many of our communities, many of our Hispanic communities, where they have events and things that they bring us into as well to talk to parents. I think one of the most important things that we've done is, and we continue paying for this, we paid for it with Esther, but it was one of those things that we said it's too important to not do it, even though the money ran out. You have to still, the money's gone. You have to still figure out what's important. And that was having a bilingual front office person in our schools that have heavy bilingual populations. And so, because one of the worst things you can do is not be able to communicate with family. And that's one of the openings for parents is, can you talk to me? And so that's something that we've continued, but all of it's a work in progress. There's always, I hear things every day. I'm like, we should do that better. We need to do better. But it's definitely something that's important for us, for families to feel welcome and not to be worried about their documentation. So.
Anybody else to answer that question? Otherwise, anything else? Thank you very much. Once again, I thank our panelists for being with us today. Oh, I'm sorry.
You put that over that way.
Okay, I'm over again. Okay, thank you. Once again, I think each and every time when we have people here to talk, we get ideas and follow our next session. And I would just say that this Knollwood Baptist Church logo right here, we really hope that can be Faith in the City logo, because we really want to encourage more faith communities. And Esharan and I have been talking about how to encourage more faith communities to be part of this. We hope that you will join us next month. We're going to be taking a look at adolescent mental health and the challenges within the classroom, some research-based data on that, and also some activities and practices that are going on in the classroom. So we hope you will join us. If you are not on our mailing list, there's a sign up out there. We want to give you information. We want to let you know when you can advocate before the county commissioners for some of these votes and be part of these action steps. Once again, leave us that information or join our Facebook at Faith in the City. We really appreciate your being here today. Thank you so much. Please get cookies. We don't have to take them ourselves.